Welcome back to Down the Road. Yesterday we tried to hook up with Steve Hall. Of course, the man's busy. He's the superintendent of the Kindred Public School, and they've got a bond issue out there that takes and points a need to $26.4 million to make that school district what it needs to be because it's growing. It is growing big time. And so, that bond issue is going to be in front of the Kindred School District, and we want to get a chance to talk to him about it because, to me, it mirrors what other school districts are going to have to do in some of those growth areas. And so let's bring him in. Steve Hall, Kindred Superintendent. Mr. Hall, I always got to call superintendents Mr. because it scares the heck out of me not to. Good to have you coming down the road with us.
Thanks for having me.
Want to talk a little bit about $26.4 million. What are you going to do with it if it passes?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Joel. It is a big project, and for a school our size, as we continue to grow, as you mentioned, it is something we've been eyeing for the last 4 years, really following and monitoring what's been taking place. And what's been happening with our growth in our district is there's housing that's available. People are moving into the area, and we are growing at a rate of 20 students per year. That's our average the last 10 years, is 20 students per year. So in that planning, we've talked for the last year and a half with an architect and our building and grounds committee, and we've been planning for how do we meet that need. Our elementary school was full with all at capacity in the fall of 2020, a year ago. We added 2 portable classrooms to the elementary. So that building is all 4 sections except for 1 grade. So we have 4 sections in that building. We're using all the space plus the 2 portable rooms outside that. And that growth is continuing on into our high school. And, we are in our 9th year only of our new high school, but we anticipate with the size of the classes coming up from the elementary in 23-24 school year, we're going to be at capacity in our high school. So we need to do something to meet that need and provide the quality education that we have had in the Kindred School District. We want to continue that. So we would propose with this project then the elementary would be added on to so that we could have 5 sections per grade. We would pull 6th grade out of the elementary and bring them over to a middle school that we would like to add on to the west side of our high school. And we would move grades 7 and 8 into that middle school addition. So we would have a whole new middle school addition onto the high school, create space in both our elementary and our high school to have room and capacity for about 1,300 students. We estimate in 10 years at the growth rate that we're going right now, we'll be about 1,050 students plus in 10 years. So we need to plan. We need to plan for that growth, and that's really what we're shooting for, is 1,300. Our facilities to hold 1,300 plus students.
You're planning for 10 years out, which obviously you have to do. That's what this is all about, a bond issue. But you're talking about 1,050 students you have to be ready for in 10 years. I want to go back what would be 20 years from that 10. In other words, 10 years from where we're at now. Where were you at student-wise 10 years ago?
We were about 660 students. We're currently, this fall, we had 831 students in our district, 25% growth in the last 10 years. So at that rate, that's why we're anticipating that we need to plan for this growth of 20 students per year. So we would never have thought that we would be growing at the rate that we are. We were hoping that we could get to at least paying off our high school, which is in the fall of 2027 is when we make our final payment. So we are going to overlap our 2 building projects for a while. It's just not possible to wait and to see if our anything's going to change. We just can see that it's going to continue to grow as housing becomes available. People are moving into the area, and it's just a good place for educating students.
So let me put this in perspective. Prior to all of this, and you're like you said, it's going to take 2027 to get that bond issue paid off. But there's no way you plan for 1,050 students in 10 years with the bond issue that you had nearly 10 years ago, and so these. I'm just gonna say it. These rural Fargo, these rural Bismarck school districts where this growth is just exploding, not everybody wants to live in the big city. They don't mind working there. They don't mind getting in their pickup or their car and driving in there and working there, but they want their children raised in that Class B atmosphere. So I say this to call it softball question, call it whatever you want, but do you see that 1,050 students in 10 years as something that's pretty rock solid that you know is going to happen?
I think it certainly will, with the developments that are ready to go, and we still have a couple in our area that are finishing. There's still lots available, and there's more to be added to our communities. So we're listening to the developers, we're listening to the communities around us that make up our district, and it certainly is, it's going to happen. The growth is going to happen as we go forward. And I've had the question, Joel, why didn't you build bigger 9 years ago? The high school is only 9 years old. Why didn't you do that? Well, state law only allows school districts to have a debt at 10% of their assessed value. We maxed out our debt limit in 2010. We could only build the school building that was $14.7 million. That was our debt limit, $14.7 million. We built the building and remodeled the current elementary building for about $15.5 million. So we used general fund dollars on top of the bonded dollars that we received at 14.7. So we went up to 15.5 million. Over 2 years, we budgeted and used building fund and general fund to cover the costs of that building project back in 2010 through 2012. We opened up in 2012.
So 1 year, let's assume this passes. And let's assume that you get what you need, that 26.4 million, to meet what you can obviously see is going to be the demand in the future. How many mills will that take Kindred as a school district to?
Yeah, our assessed value, or our district's taxable valuation, has doubled since 2010. We were at 15 million approximately. We're over $32 million this year in taxable valuation. But right now, to pay these $26.4 million in bonds back, it would be a payment that would equate to, at this time, an approximate number of 58 mills, just over 58 and a half mills, based on our current taxable valuation. Now, obviously, our taxable valuation has been growing at a rate of 7% per year. That's the other thing we're tracking. So our debt limit now is $30 million. But we tried to, it's that balance between how much is it going to cost taxpayers and what do we need to meet the needs of our district. So it was a big conversation this last year about how many mills, how many $1 million project is this going to be? But we feel that this is what is needed, and it is 58 mills. On a $100,000 house, that's about $263 a year on $100,000. So take that times 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 to get whatever your cost is going to be. So we know that is a significant part of this. That comes with the growth in the building project, and we're trying to meet those needs, but yet still be cognizant of what is going to be the cost to the taxpayer.
When we pushed the bond issue back home, I remember advocating for it and talking to a farmer that was about, he must have been well into his 70s. And I said, are you going to support the bond issue? And he said, well, sure I am. And he was conservative. He was very conservative. He never had a Heitkamp for anything sign in his yard. But I asked him, I said, why? And he said, well, it's easy. Somebody educated me and somebody educated my kids. And so the investment that I'm making into this is an investment for kids in the future, no different than what somebody did for me. And it seems to me that attitude is still out there. You haven't been running, you haven't been hiding, you've been holding public meetings, and I'm assuming you still have some. If you would, tell people what's been going on at the public meetings and what you have waiting yet.
Sure. We actually last March, Joel, we had public meetings, 2 in March. It was, I called it the State of the District Address, and we had 2 public meetings, and we shared at that time what was happening in our district. We didn't have a building project plan laid out at that time. It wasn't concrete. But we did share in those March meetings that we were going to be coming forward with a bond issue because we need to do this. So we started our public informational meetings, and we sent out mailings this past week and a half, 2 weeks. So we started our public meetings last Thursday. We were in Leonard. Tonight at 7 o'clock, we'll be in Walcott. And then Thursday night, we'll be in Hickson. And next week, we will be in Kindred on Monday night and Davenport on Tuesday night. And all those meetings are at 7. So public presentation of what our project is, answering questions, sharing the costs, doing what we need to do to try to help pass the bond issue and move forward with this.
Yeah, well, good for you, because as someone who built a lot of rural water district, I can tell you public meetings matter. Going to those meetings and having somebody unload on you matters, because then they have access to you and you get a chance to respond to it versus them just say it in a cafe somewhere. So good for you for doing it. If people want to know more about the bond issue, get the details, where do they go?
Well, everything that we have is on our website. My presentations will be out there in the next four nights coming up. And then all our information about our bond issue, questions that they have about who can vote, who can't, figuring out what their tax impact is going to be. The calculator is on our website. They just need to know their true and full value off their tax statement. And there's a little sample on there. So we're being very open up front about here's how you can figure out what that cost is going to be. But there's a fact sheet on there. Same thing, that was the same information that was mailed out to all our patrons within our school district area. So that information was out in the mail. If they didn't open up a little yellow packet, which some people said, oh, I saw that and I didn't open it for some reason. But that's the school district information, but it's also on the website. So they can go there or give me a call. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, what you just laid out is what a lot of school districts are going to use for a plan that are watching this show. So Superintendent Hall, thank you for coming down the road with us.